Ladies, are you ready to ignite your purpose and bring about positive change in the world? At Ignite Purpose, we are focused on empowering women to fulfill their purpose through our tailored resources and guidance.
Hi, welcome to Ignite Purpose. I'm Victoria Miserak, and I am so excited to have Patrice Smith with us today. I have been wanting Patrice here for a long time because the ministry that she and her husband Mark have is really so many multi-levels of extraordinary and wonderful. So Patrice, thank you for being here. I'm so grateful. So Patrice and Mark, they have a performing arts group basically, and it's a ministry, and they've called it Potter's Players. And I have been blessed to have seen several of their plays, and they are just tremendous. You laugh, you cry, you enter into the glory of God. They're just fabulous. Patrice, thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the things I really wanted to let our listeners know is, how did this happen? Like, did you always want to have a performing arts group? Did you, was that on your heart all your life, and then you created this to happen, or how did that come about?
Actually, so my husband Mark grew up doing a lot of theater. He was an army brat, and so they moved around a lot, and their whole family, he and his sister and his parents, got really involved in theater wherever they lived.
Oh, wow, his parents too.
Yes,
oh,
the parents too. And so he always talked about how they just made such friends. Like when they had to move around and move every 2 years and start from scratch, and he was really, really shy growing up, had a really hard time making friends. Theater became a way that he could make friends easily, and just have a deeper level of relationship. And he talked about that in the community that theater was to him. So he did that all growing up. He actually did theater in college. He was actually in plays with my cousin in college in Texas. Like before we got together, like he knew my cousin through theater. Isn't that funny? And my cousin's actually a professor of theater at Baylor. So it kind of must run in the family a bit. There's some other actors in our family as well. But down the line, I never had an interest. I was really shy too, and I never had an interest at all. In college, I had some friends who were theater majors that I'd love to go to the theater and watch them, and that was the extent. So when I was 27, I think, the church we were going to was doing a lot of skits. It was kind of like in the 90s when that was like a big thing, especially our church was kind of more of a seeker church. And I was like dragged into a skit that they needed a warm body for, and I was really not wanting to do it.
Really?
And I went in sort of kicking and screaming and came out smiling, and like actually really had fun doing that.
Wow.
And it was neat. The music pastor at the time had been a ghostwriter, so he was a professional writer as well, and then he started handing me some half-written scripts and asked me to finish them. So I kind of got mentored in writing some theater things that way through him. And that grew into then me writing whole scripts, and eventually as we started, we then started a ministry. We had little children at the time, and I really didn't want my little kids to grow up being bored in church the way I was. I was raised in a very just legalistic, dying church, and like it was just this cold tile basement floor with me and one other kid in it. Does anybody know where Paul went on his next missionary journey? Anyone? So I was like, I don't want that for my kids. I want them to see Jesus as the most exciting thing in the whole wide world. And we started a ministry called Bibleodian, which was for children. So it was theater and puppets and music for children. And we had a team, and the team grew. And over several years, it grew to where we were doing mission trips together.
Oh my gosh.
We were going into like big family expos and things like that, where we could get in and share the gospel that way in a secular environment. But because we had puppets and ministry, people would let us in and let us share what we wanted. So that grew really big until the Lord called me to home educate our kids. And I knew I couldn't do both because I was spending 20 to 30 hours a week doing that and trying to raise kids at the same time. So we passed that ministry off to some other people in our church. And I began home educating. And then on that part of the journey, eventually, we wanted to have theater for our children. So I started writing some scripts for just the small group of homeschoolers that we had, which I think was 11 children at the time.
Wow.
So I began writing some plays for them and doing them kind of small.
Yeah.
And then we moved up here, and we did not want to move to this area. We really had a different area we wanted to go to, but this is where God opened the doors. Totally know this is where he wanted us to land, in the Purcellville area. And the church we were going to at the time when we moved up here was helping put on the 100-year anniversary of the town of Purcellville, and they had heard we did theater in our past, and so they were like, okay, you guys are going to direct this really huge production that has like 100 people or something. I'm like, we don't know how to do that. Like, I'm like small potatoes. Like, that's way bigger than we've ever done. Like, but you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
And we did it, and
Oh
we
my
loved
gosh.
it. And so we did several years of that. We just saw so many people coming
Wow.
that were not everybody's aunts and uncles and
Yeah,
grandparents. Were like,
yeah.
who are these people? And come to find out that just the community started to find out about the quality of the productions, and they wanted to come. And so we were really excited about that. And eventually that door closed for us. And so we had to kind of like go, okay, Lord. We had a few years where we didn't do any. The Lord had us doing other things. But in 2017, I was recovering from a pretty big surgery and spending this summer just kind of recovering, spending a lot of time with the Lord. And our kids were getting older, some were already grown, and realizing I had more time on my hands. And so Mark and I both prayed, and I said, should I get a job? Like, what do I do with the time? Like, what would God have me to do with my time that is worthy of it? And he led me back to theater, into the vision of what is the Potter's Players.
Wow.
So building a community of people who love each other, who work together in this area especially.
Yeah.
It can be hard to find community.
Yeah,
Find a place to
absolutely.
belong. So we wanted it to
Absolutely.
be a place to belong. That was part of the vision God gave me, and of just trying to build a quality theater that shares God's stories.
Yeah.
That is truly a biblical theater,
Yeah.
that focuses on sharing the good news.
Yeah, I
And-
mean, your plays are so amazing, and to hear you say that that's too big, your small potatoes, makes me laugh, because I've been to some of their plays, and they are much bigger than small potatoes. They're really tremendous, and I weep every time I come to one of your productions. I weep. It's so well done and so beautiful. And you mentioned the writing part, which is really what I'm so curious about. And you've told me a little bit, ahead of time, but like, I love what you have told me about the process of writing. It's not just you writing, is that right?
No, I have felt, from back at the time of Bibleodian, there was a lot of comedy in it as well. And I would sit at the computer, and I feel like oftentimes I'm taking dictation. I'm reading the Bible. It's like I call it my kinetic Bible study. I spend a lot of time reading the Bible, reading what story I feel like God's calling us to communicate, and praying a lot. And if it doesn't just come easily, if it's not coming right out, I know it's not time to write. I need to put it away and wait, or pray more, or read more.
Wow.
But some of those had a lot of humor in them, and I would just be sitting at the computer laughing my head off. And Mark, my husband's like, "What is going on over there?" I'm like, "That's so funny. It's
This
cracking
is
me
so
up
good.
because it's just coming." It's like I go.
Wow.
It's like the download. Really, it's like truly. I don't feel like I write it. I'm not saying it's nowhere like. It's not like it's the Word of God. It's totally different. That's the Bible, and that's
But you
there is
feel
an
Him.
inspiration. Totally. I am not that smart. I am not smart enough to write these things.
They are brilliant.
If
They're
I'm
so
not,
good.
now with these, they're more serious, and a lot of them in there, if I'm not crying while I write it, then it's not right.
Yeah.
Then I know I need to go back again and pray and maybe write a different time.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, that is so awesome. Gosh. So I've heard that while you are doing productions and even sometimes rehearsals, that you have experienced like tremendous things happening.
Mhm.
So can you share a couple stories about that?
Sure. I think the big one I think about was last Christmas for Light Has Come. the Thursday performance was a little dry to us. I mean, the audience seemed to love it. We had a lot of sickness going around. And I went home after Thursday's first performance and was kind of down, actually. And I actually cried. And I thought, oh, I'm just tired. I need to go to sleep. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, nope, I'm still kind of down. So I called a great friend of mine who is such a prayer warrior, and she's like, I really feel like you need to do communion. I'm like, yes, we do. We normally do communion. And I got bogged down in the details, which I shouldn't have. And so I prayed more, and God said, you need to have you guys all confess your sins. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And as soon as I said yes to that, he goes, and anoint people with oil. And I'm like, oh my goodness, gosh. So that's
because you don't do that. I mean,
not everybody does that. And as a group, we don't always do that. We hadn't offered it before, and but I did. I said yes to God, and I created a room. I put candles and brought the lighting down, and oh my goodness. God's presence filled that room in ways I think a lot of us had never experienced before. Someone told me later, I watched one of our actors came to the doorway and stopped and then walked back out. And then I'm like, I prayed for that person, and later they walked back in and they just had seemed uncomfortable. And I only found out recently that I asked about that, or we were talking about it, and they told me, I knew in that moment when I hit that wall of that room, I felt that God was going to do something big in my life, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I'm like, what? So there was a lot that went on in that room. We saw people healed. People who said they didn't know if they could even perform that night suddenly had their voice return. So many things. In their performance, we had a woman who was healed. She called me the next day and said that she had an eye condition, which she'd been on the prayer list, so I knew about it. And in one very special moment in the play, she said she felt it. And we hadn't even asked God for miracles like that. She felt in this very special moment in the play that God she felt the eye get healed.
What was the moment of the play?
This was a moment where there's a character named Yogi who's a shepherd, and he's injured, and he's been very bitter against God and everything, but the angels have shown up and told of Jesus's presence, and so he finally makes it there, and just as he reached out to touch the baby Jesus's head, in the moment that his finger touched the baby Jesus, she felt her eye get healed. And she showed it to me, and it was like, she's like, look, and it was totally healed. We didn't even ask the Lord for that. We've had many different times when we've gotten together. We've seen our own group of people healed. We've seen just people healed of strongholds, even of emotional things.
Well, I would imagine that's the case. I mean, because you and Mark, I mean, I've seen you with the groups that you are working with, for each play, and you create such a home environment for them, and they seem to feel safe. So I'm not surprised that a lot of healing, especially emotional healing, goes on as well as obviously the physical, which we love when God does that. So that is so cool. Patrice, I know you have a play coming up. So would you care to talk a little bit about that? Share with everyone when and where?
Sure. This one's called This Christmas Majesty. Those are the words that God gave me. It's really kind of two titles. This Christmas is really about the first part of the play, and the Majesty is all about Jesus. So this one is going to be December 7th, 8th, and 9th. And the 7th and 8th are Thursday, Friday. Those are at 7 p.m. And the 9th is a Saturday, and that's a matinee at 2 o'clock. So it's free. You don't need tickets. Just show up.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit about, I don't know, is there anything more to share?
Sure. It's
just story, just a little teaser, just so everybody can get there.
Sure. So the first part, we meet the Adamson family, and they're kind of a hot mess, like a lot of families are. But it's 3 generations that are getting together. They're getting ready for the youngest granddaughter is going to be performing in a church Christmas play as an angel. But the family's gathering together, and to spend a little quality time, the grandfather asks the question, if you could have one thing this Christmas, what would you ask for? But it can't cost it. It can't be anything that you can buy or earn. And the family goes around and talks and says something, and most of them come up with a rather stupid answer. But then we have a freeze moment for them, and we get to see inside their heart and what they won't tell each other, but what they're feeling on the inside. And it's like the gamut of what humanity goes through, right? We've got a teenage daughter who's going through a lot of emotional struggles. We've got a family that's getting divorced, and the son's trying to figure out, why did my dad leave? So lots of different things from different generations.
I shouldn't be smiling at the depressing parts of these stories. I saw a little glimpse, and it is so well done, and it's enjoyable. I mean, not only are you getting such strong biblical messages, you're showing the reality of all of our lives, and also what Jesus can do when we allow him in. So,
so then we follow the family who basically are coming into the play, and we have the play within the play, which is all about Jesus, right? Because all of their issues, every struggle that we have, he is the answer to. He is who we need. So we see all of the power and majesty of Jesus from before creation. We see him in creation. We see him through the creation of man and the fall, and that he left heaven to come to earth. And when I was just praying about what to write, the words that God first gave me was big. I didn't know what that would mean. It is big. It is big in every way.
It's not small potatoes, is it?
It's big. Okay. It's like, buckle up.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the train of his robe. And so we're literally trying to portray the impossible, which is heaven. We've never ever tried to do anything like this, but I kept seeing the train of his robe. And maybe I won't give away too much about that. I want it to be a surprise. But let's just say it's gonna be big and
beautiful,
and
spectacular,
beautiful. Yeah, so beautiful. And we see this resolve with the family too, that experiences God in that room, and hopefully the audience does too.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's a doubt that won't happen. Oh my gosh, God definitely blesses your obedience. So thank you, Patrice. Thank you so much for what you do.